a new book by a woman named Margaret Mitchell, and the title is Gone with the Wind. And I was so angry about what they'd been giving me, like all these parachute jumpers and things. I said, I'll bet it's a dilly, and walked out of the office.
In the golden age of Hollywood, a time of manufactured goddesses and studio-polished glamour, there was one woman who refused to be beautiful. She chose instead to be real, to be fierce, to be, in a word, unforgettable. Her name was Bette Davis. She was not a conventional star. With her famously large, expressive eyes that could convey both terrifying rage and profound vulnerability, she was an actress of raw, electrifying power. She was a two-time Academy Award winner, a titan of the silver screen who fought the powerful studio system and won. She was known for being difficult, a label she wore as a badge of honor, a testament to her ferocious commitment to her craft. She specialized in playing formidable, often monstrous women. The manipulative Southern belle in The Little Foxes, the fading narcissistic actress Margot in All About Eve, and the grotesque washed-up child star in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Her on-screen persona was one of strength, intelligence, and a dangerous, untamable will. But off-screen, her life was a drama just as intense. A whirlwind of 4 marriages, a legendary feud with her rival Joan Crawford, and a theatrical, larger-than-life personality that dominated every room she entered. She was a woman who craved love and family, but whose own immense and often overwhelming personality made it a near impossible dream. And in 1985, her real life and her monstrous on-screen roles would collide in the most public and painful way imaginable. Her own biological daughter published a savage tell-all book portraying her not as a beloved mother, but as a cruel, abusive, alcoholic monster. This single act of perceived betrayal would ignite one of the most bitter and public mother-daughter feuds in the history of Hollywood. What is the real story of Bette Davis's 3 children? In this video, we will tell the complete inside the mansion and deeply tragic stories of B.D. Margot and Michael, the 3 children of the legendary and famously difficult Bette Davis. Their lives were dominated by a mother who was a force of nature, a trailblazing artist, a 4-time married diva, and a woman whose immense love could be as overwhelming and as damaging as her terrifying rage. We will explore the life of her only biological child, Barbara Davis B.D. Hyman, the daughter who went from precious love to her mother's greatest public enemy after publishing one of the most notorious tell-all memoirs in history. We'll uncover the heartbreaking and almost forgotten story of her adopted daughter, Margot Merrill, a child with severe disabilities whose life was marked by tragedy and institutionalization, a source of private grief for Bette throughout her life. And we will tell the story of her adopted son, Michael Merrill, the quiet survivor, the loyal son who was caught in the crossfire between his feuding mother and sister, and ultimately chose to stand by his mother's side until the very end. To bring you this epic Hollywood tragedy, we have gone deep into the archives of the Golden Age, read the dueling venomous memoirs written by both Bette Davis and her daughter B.D., and analyze the rare interviews and legal documents that tell the story of a family torn apart by fame, resentment, and betrayal. Number 3. B.D. Hyman. The Accuser. She was the precious love, the adored biological daughter her mother had longed for her entire life. She was a living prop in her mother's carefully crafted public image of devoted motherhood, even appearing in one of her mother's most famous films. So what happened to turn B.D. Hyman against her famous mother, so spectacularly leading to an act of literary matricide that would define them both forever? Barbara Davis Merrill, known to the world as B.D., was born in 1947. She was the only biological child of Bette Davis from her 4th and final marriage to the actor Gary Merrill. Bette was 39 years old and had longed for a child of her own. B.D. became the absolute center of her universe, a precious love, as Bette often called her, in public and in private. She grew up in a world of immense privilege, but also one of intense theatrical drama. Her childhood was defined by her mother's larger-than-life, all-consuming personality. Bette's life was a performance, and her family were often the supporting cast. BD had a small but memorable role as the neighbor's daughter in her mother's iconic 1962 horror film, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a film that ironically mirrored the real-life toxicity of Bette's relationship with her rival Joan Crawford. In 1963, in a move that shocked Hollywood, a 16-year-old BD married the 29-year-old Jeremy Hyman in a ceremony that her mother Bette not only approved of, but actively encouraged and arranged. For a time, the young couple lived with Bette, creating a strange, codependent family unit that seemed destined for conflict. The relationship between mother and daughter fractured over the years, and then in 1985, it exploded in the most public way imaginable, with the publication of BD's savage tell-all memoir, My Mother's Keeper. The book was an absolute bombshell. It portrayed Bette Davis not as a beloved legend, but as a narcissistic, profane, chain-smoking, rage-fueled alcoholic. BD detailed a childhood of terror, describing terrifying drunken rages, screaming matches that lasted for hours, and a mother who was emotionally and verbally abusive and relentlessly controlling. She wrote of Bette's staged suicide attempts and her obsession with her own fame. The book was published shortly after Bette had suffered a debilitating stroke and a mastectomy for breast cancer, a timing that was seen by the public and by Bette herself as the ultimate act of cruelty and betrayal. The backlash against BD was immense. Bette's Hollywood friends like Olivia de Havilland and her son Michael rushed to her defense, publicly condemning the book. But the damage was done. My Mother's Keeper was a massive bestseller, forever tarnishing the Bette Davis myth and creating a new monstrous caricature. Bette's response was swift, dramatic, and absolute. She never spoke to BD again. She wrote her own counter-memoir, This and That, partly to refute the claims and to tell her side of the story. And in her will, in a final dramatic act of maternal revenge, she famously and publicly disinherited BD and her children, writing that she had made her choice and that her blood had betrayed her. In the years that followed BD, Hyman became a prominent figure in the born-again Christian movement, leading her own ministry with her husband. She has never recanted the claims in her book, maintaining to this day that she wrote it out of love to force her mother to confront her alcoholism. The feud remains one of the most bitter public and tragic mother-daughter battles in the history of Hollywood, a wound that never healed, a story with two narrators and no agreed-upon truth. While the world watched the public war of words between Bette and her biological daughter, another daughter's story, one of profound and silent tragedy, was unfolding far away from the spotlight, a source of Bette's deepest and most private pain. Number 2. Margot Merrill, the forgotten daughter. She was the baby girl they adopted to give their precious daughter a sister, a key ingredient in Bette's dream of a perfect, bustling family. But the life of Margot Merrill would be a heartbreaking story of disability, separation, and silence, a quiet, lifelong tragedy that haunted Bette Davis to her final days. In 1951, shortly after adopting their son Michael, Bette Davis and her husband Gary Merrill adopted a newborn baby girl they named Margot. For a brief, hopeful time, they were the picture of a happy, sprawling Hollywood family. But as Margot grew from an infant into a toddler, it became clear that something was wrong. At around age 3, she was diagnosed with severe brain damage, which was believed to have been caused by an injury during or shortly after her birth. She was developmentally disabled, and as she grew older, her behavior became difficult and sometimes unmanageable for the family. In that era, the resources and understanding for children with special needs were severely limited. Institutions were often the only option presented to parents, after years of struggling to care for her. At home, a home already filled with the volatility of two famous hard-drinking actors, Bette Davis made the agonizing and controversial decision to place Margot in a specialized residential institution, the Laughlin School in Geneva, New York. For the rest of her long life, Margot lived in institutions. Bette continued to support her financially, ensuring she had the best care available at the time. But her physical presence in Margot's life was limited. It was a source of immense and private grief for Bette, a sadness that stood in stark contrast to her famously tough, unsentimental public persona. In her book, B.D. Hyman used this as another weapon against her mother, accusing Bette of being cold and essentially abandoning her disabled daughter. But Bette's other son, Michael, has fiercely defended her. He has explained that it was a heartbreaking but necessary decision made on the advice of doctors for Margot's own safety and for the well-being of the entire family. He maintained that Bette never stopped loving Margot. Margot Merrill's story is the quiet central tragedy of the Davis family. While the battle with B.D. raged in public, Margot's silent separate life was a constant unspoken source of pain and guilt for a mother who had dreamed of a perfect family, only to be met with a reality that was anything but. Margot passed away in 2001, having lived her entire life in care, the most innocent and most silent victim of the family's turmoil. Margot's life was a private tragedy, a source of conflict between her siblings. But as Bette faced the public betrayal of her daughter B.D., she would find her staunchest and most loyal defender in her adopted son, the one who chose to stand by her side. Number 1. Michael Merrill, the loyal son. He grew up in the same chaotic theatrical household. He was not her biological child. Yet when his mother was publicly and viciously attacked by his own sister, Michael Merrill made a clear and powerful choice: loyalty. This is the story of the quiet survivor, the devoted son who stood by Bette Davis until the very end. Adopted as a baby in 1950 by Bette Davis and Gary Merrill, Michael grew up as the quiet center in a storm of larger-than-life personalities. He was the calm observer of his mother's immense fame, his adoptive father's struggles with alcoholism, and his sister B.D.'s complicated and often fraught relationship with their mother. Unlike his siblings, Michael chose a life far from the chaos of Hollywood. He attended law school and became a successful attorney in Boston. He married, had a family, and built a life of deliberate and hard-won normalcy. But in 1985, he was thrust into the center of the family's public war. When his sister B.D. Hyman published My Mother's Keeper, Michael was horrified and outraged. He immediately and fiercely came to his mother's defense. He gave public interviews, refuting his sister's claims and painting a very different, more nuanced picture of their childhood. He acknowledged that their mother was difficult. He acknowledged that she was demanding, theatrical, and had a drinking problem. But he vehemently denied that she was the cruel, unloving monster that B.D. had described. He spoke of a mother who, despite her profound flaws, was deeply loving and supportive of him. He became the crucial counter-narrative, the voice that challenged B.D.'s version of the truth. His loyalty was a lifeline for the aging and ailing Bette Davis, who was devastated by B.D.'s book. In her final years after she had completely and permanently cut off B.D., Michael was her rock. He was the one she trusted implicitly. He became the executor of her will and the co-trustee of her estate, a position of immense trust and responsibility. In the will that so famously and dramatically disinherited B.D., Bette left the bulk of her fortune to Michael and her longtime personal assistant. Michael Merrill's story is one of quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. He was the son who, when forced to choose sides in a terrible family war, stood by his mother, becoming the ultimate protector of her memory and her complex, but in his eyes, loving legacy. Together, the lives of B.D., Margot, and Michael are a powerful cautionary tale about the destructive power of a larger-than-life personality and the immense pain that can fester within a famous family. An accuser, a silent victim, and a loyal son, their stories form the complete and ultimately tragic saga of Bette Davis's children. This theme of navigating the chaotic personal life of a true Hollywood icon is a powerful one we have explored before on this channel. In a previous video, we dove into the world of a very different kind of musical legend. David Gilmour, the iconic voice and masterful guitar of the groundbreaking band Pink Floyd. We explored his incredible journey and his role in creating some of the most ambitious and timeless music ever recorded. You can watch that definitive story by clicking the link right here. And his large creative family tells a fascinating story about art fatherhood and building a different kind of dynasty. We are currently developing a deep dive, David Gilmour's 8 Children, the Untold Story. To explore that incredible musical family, be sure to subscribe and have hit that notification bell.